As you can see, Susan is a very good friend of mine and of Chile. But let me tell you that I'm really proud to be a speaker at this conference organized by the Council of the Americas, an organization that was created 47 years ago by David Rockefeller and other prominent entrepreneurs to promote regional economic integration and democratic governance. Today, I will take only two subjects. One is Chile's foreign policy, and also a few words about the actual realities of our region and how do we deal with those new situations, and maybe a few comments on the Summit of the Americas. Maybe I will include something about dancing also, because Robert is here. I was involved in that? I was not. Just two things about our foreign policy. Just to mention three. One, it is a nation's policy. We are not building a new building. We're not constructing a new building. We're just putting a new floor on an existing one, which has been built over some decades. Susan told something about the last 30 years. Well, we have been building things through many years. And that makes our foreign policy really stable and predictable. Second, Chile is a country that believes in the preeminence and full respect of international law and the rule of law. This is not only the correct thing to do, but it's also, we believe, the best protection for a small country as we are. It is also the best support for peace in a continent where, in the last maybe 80 years, we did not have any large war. And that's why we always stress the importance of international treaties and the respect for those treaties. The third point that I want to make is that we see our foreign policy as a key tool to obtain development, because Chile has a very clear targets on this. We want to be a developed country, and not in many, many years. We want to be a developed country within this decade. That means that our income per capita, that today is between $16,000, $17,000 per capita, should go to 22, 23, 24,000 within this decade. Also, we need to eliminate extreme poverty. I will give you some figures on how it has been being diminished over time. And also, we need to improve the income distribution of our country, which is very bad compared with the rest of the world. And our foreign policy is completely aligned with these objectives. Just to give you the best example that I can give you is a decision in our country to be an open economy. 40 years ago, Chile made the decision to be an open economy and not to work for 17 million people, but to work for 6,000 million people around the world. Import tariffs were reduced from a level as high as 750% for some products to a flat 10%. In 1990, with the democratic governments in place, this was continued through the FTAs. And today, Chile has 23 agreements with 60 countries, giving us preferential access to 85% of global GDP. 6 successive governments have continued this road with no hesitation at all. I had the opportunity to go to the OECD when Chile was began to be a member. And I told that at that initial speech that Chile was a 3F country. And everybody was saying, what's a 3F country? Well, a 3F country is a country that is fanatic for free trade. And so today, Chile has the 8th lowest average effective import tariff in the world. And foreign trade is 75% of the GDP. Just to make a comparison, Brazil is 22% of GDP. But today, this government is just sent this week a new law to the Congress to make the final step on that, because we're passing a law to reduce import tariffs in Chile to 0 in all products. So in the next 3 years, Chile will have a 0 import tariff for all products all across. Only Singapore, Switzerland, and the autonomous Chinese provinces of Hong Kong and Macau have this around the world. This is an impressive thing for a Latin American country. Remember that Latin America was the best student of high barriers and import substitution not many years ago. This reduction on import tariff will keep on eliminating diversion of trade, but most important, will potentiate Chile as a platform to export manufactured products, because all the components and raw materials will have to pay no taxes. No doubt, this will be a challenge, a new challenge for some Chilean industries, but we prefer to look at the opportunities, at the challenges. This will be a great opportunity for the country to be competitive at the world level. These policies that I have told you, plus a full respect for property rights, which has been put even at the constitutional level, have brought Chile enormous benefits through time. Just to give you some numbers, GDP growth in the last 3 decades was 40% more in Chile than the average of Latin America. Today, Chile has the second largest, and is very close to the first, which is Argentina, the second highest income per capita of the region. And remember that Chile was the poorest Spanish colony in Latin America, and was called, at the maps, it was written down by Finisterra. We were the end of the world. Extreme poverty. In the last 25 years, and I define extreme poverty as less than $60 per person per month at PPP, has been reduced from 18.8% to 2.7% in the last 25 years. And we will reduce it even further. Our objective is to get that to 0. Foreign investment in Chile last year was the 3rd largest in Latin America, only after Mexico and Brazil, which are much larger countries. And if you take into account the size, for example, the investment in Brazil was 4 times the investment in Chile, but the Brazilian economy is 10 times the size of Chile. In summary, Chile can be and have the opportunity to be the first Latin American country to be a developed country, and not in a very long time, but within this decade. But we think that free trade, respect for property rights, rule of law is not enough to obtain development in a so short period. We need to go ahead and make some other things. We need to increase the competitiveness of our country. So we're making several things on that area. First, we have a program called Competitiveness Push, Impulso Competitivo. 50 different actions to try to improve our competitiveness. Just to give you some examples, Chile just opened our skies within the country to go from one city to the other one to any foreign airline. We're making the same on shipping. We changed all the rules so that you can incorporate a company in Chile in one day. We created a program called Startup Chile. We're bringing young students, young people, entrepreneurs, to make their projects in Chile. We give all of them, each of them, $40,000 so that they can start it. And we have people from all over the world, from Silicon Valley, from Europe, from all over the world, making projects in Chile. Not because we need to earn money of their projects. The only thing we're asking them is, tell us what are the barriers, what are the problems you are fighting, what are the things you are finding in Chile that makes your work not as easy as you should like. We're also making integration with regional like-minded countries. We're beginning, and we will sign the treaty in June, that we call Pacific Alliance, with Mexico, Colombia, Peru, countries that are also opening their economies. These countries are 40% of the GDP of Latin America, but they are 55% of all exports. And we will try to have free movements of goods, services, financial resources, and even people among all those countries. We're also working on increasing the human capital of our people, which is one of our greatest challenges. Today, Chilean universities are among the best in Latin America, but they lag far behind the best universities in the world. So we need to work on that. And we are sending, just heard Roberto about this program. Today Chile is sending, and not this year, we began this several years ago, around 2,000 Chilean students per year with scholarships funded by Chile to the best universities in the world for doctoral and postdoctoral studies, so that those people will come back to Chile and help us in increasing that human capital. And third, we're saving for the future. I think this is a very important thing to take into account. Part of the economic growth of Chile and other Latin American countries is due to the high price of raw materials. And in our case, that's the case of copper. And that will not last forever. So Chile spends only according to the long-term price of copper. And we save the rest. So Chile today has several $billion in savings, and today, if you take into account savings and what the amount that we owe, Chile is not a debtor, it's a net creditor. Moreover, as you know, since the 80s, the pension system in Chile is based on individual savings, so that the hidden liabilities with the older generations is not a problem in Chile, or at least it's much smaller than in other countries. Just let me give you some words also on our region. How do we see it? We see our region, and I'm talking first in Latin America, characterized by, first, different political and economic models. What I have told you about the Chilean model, what we are doing, is quite different from what other countries are doing. Second, there has been economic growth for several years in most of the countries. Maybe you can say that this is because of the high price of raw materials. Maybe this will not last for many years. But the fact is, in the last years, the economic growth in most of the country has been enormous. So there is a lot of self-confidence on most of Latin American countries because they have seen results in most of them. Third, all of these countries, even with these different political and economic models, are learning to work together. And we are learning to work in what? In what we agree. We have learned that we cannot do things in what we disagree, but there's a lot of things that we can benefit each other, and that where we do agree, and we can be independent on the other ones. So, for example, all of our organizations in Latin America, like UNASUR, CELAC, etc., have the consensus rule. And on what we are working, what are the things that on what we agree? What are the things that are of mutual benefit? Roads. In our continent, in South America, for example, there are no roads from the Pacific to Atlantic. I have one story once that we were going to inaugurate one of those roads with a Brazilian minister, and he told me that every time we talk about these corridors between the Pacific and the Atlantic, he thinks on the cowboy movies at the TV. So what's the relationship with that? Well, the cowboy movies 100 years ago was the construction of the railroads and the roads from the Pacific, from the Atlantic to the Pacific in North America. We're just doing that, beginning to do that in South America. There are no roads from one place to the other. There is no train either. We need to share energy, and just beginning to do that. There are some fantastic examples, for example, Colombia and Ecuador, Colombia and Venezuela, which they are doing it, and we need to learn from that. Some countries are making the joint buying of services, for example, on broadband for internet, which have reduced the price a lot. We're working together to fight against international crime and against drug trafficking, which is a completely international subject. There is no way that a single country can fight that. We have also some common political things, political positions. Not all of them, only a few ones. And also we're working on defense. We are sharing information in a measure in a homogeneous way, which is the first step to reduce the spending on defense. In summary, what we are trying to do is to go from songs and poetry on integration in Latin America, which has been the case for many, many decades, and try to make it more effective and concrete and try to work together. On the other hand, the USA has been more concentrated on internal issues. President Obama went to Chile, make a speech to the whole region, which was a fantastic event, and he talked about equal partners. And some important steps of that equal partners has been taken after that. For example, the FTA of Colombia, the FTA of Panama, which were stopped there for many, many years. Also, we're working with the US, with Chile and Peru on the TPP. Maybe in the future, Mexico, Colombia, and others will be part of the TPP also. So these new realities, more confident Latin American countries, maybe too confident in some cases, and the USA more concentrated on internal issues and looking for equal partners leads, of course, to over-the-table discussions on the important issues. And I think that that's what happened at the Summit of the Americas. And there was complete agreement on some issues. People do not look at that. But there was a complete agreement, for example, on the central subject of the summit. Remember that the subject was connecting the Americas, partners for prosperity, which included all the things that I just told you that are the things that we do agree. Roads, energy, whatever. And that was a complete agreement, unanimous. But the press did not do that because there was no fighting about that. And also, we maybe had the best discussion on what to do on drugs. Many presidents that were at that meeting, it was a meeting only for presidents, but I talked to some of them. All of them told me that that discussion about drugs was the best one they had till date. The subject of drugs is something very important because we do have to think, what else can we do? Do we have to change something or not? But the fact is, we're losing the war in some parts, and some countries are having very, very large problems. And the cost in some other countries has been really impressive. So talk about what to do next to fight the problem of drugs is something very important, and the discussion was fantastic. And also, there is no surprise that there was no agreement on some other issues. For example, Malvinas. How can it be that we have an agreement on Malvinas with Canada present there? It's almost impossible. And Cuba, of course. So, but on the other hand, how many issues on an international organization can have complete consensus? How many issues can have 100% agreement on a meeting like that? So, on my own view, the summit was positive. Maybe the language or the way things were argued, Roberta suffered some of that, and were not always the best, but many important things were discussed with or without agreement. Just let me finish by saying that the USA and Latin America relationship is something where both parties can have enormous benefits. For the USA will find in our continent large markets for these exports. It is the source for most of their immigrants. It is a fantastic source for many raw materials. It's a needed collaboration to fight against international crime, drugs, because this is something that a part is done in the US, but a part is coming from there. Most of the producers of the drugs are down there. So there is a large thing where the US can benefit. But in the case of Latin America, how we feel, and let me tell you that most of the countries today in Latin America do not need financing, as it was the case many years ago. But America has exactly what we need today. America has the best universities, science, technology, a culture of entrepreneurship, exactly what is missing in our countries to make a large step ahead and become developed countries. So my final words just to say that we need to work together and find the ways to obtain those mutual benefits. Thank you very much.